All right, so we're almost done. We got our intro, first body paragraph, slamming heads, our second body paragraph ended up being two paragraphs, taking a test for one another, and then the third body paragraph was our performances. And then now we're at our conclusion. If you're an identical twin, you got to use your head and you got to live a little. Um, so I'm sort of going to concede a little bit um, that it was kind of fun, even though we cheated and da da da. This is a little bit of creative license. It does take a little bit of perspective and sort of a decision. Obviously, you have a grade, you have a teacher. You know, you want to get the best grade that you can. I'm not sure if I would write about duplicity. Um, if I was turning this in for a real grade, it depends on the teacher. Depends on my relationship with the teacher, how well the teacher knows me, respects me, likes me. Um, all these things, they don't seem important, but they're kind of important. I mean, they're human beings. Some teachers run clubs on campus, so if you're a member of their club, and then you get a chance to see them in a different light, and they get a chance to see you in a different light. You talk about a lot more personal things. And some teachers are a little bit warmer and more connective, and some teachers aren't. And some teachers, and then teachers might have a bad day, or you might have a bad day. I mean, it's a true relationship in every sense of the word. So these are always considerations that you're going to think about. However, I decided that, you know what, I think that being an identical twin, this is a particular instance where I should share, even though it's not necessarily positive. But then I'll write about it, and maybe I'll decide. Whereas at the beginning, I decided in the outline, hey, I'm going to say that this is fine, and you got to have a little fun. I'm probably going to balance it out, because what I truly believe is you got to be careful, because we could have gotten even worse. Retribution or punishments. Um, and it could have affected our it could have had an effect on our futures potentially. So, all things to think about, and I'll definitely talk about that in the conclusion. So, um, I could end in a colloquial, yes, being a twin is yada yada yada, but let's see if I can do it without using colloquial words. Let's just say being an identical twin um, is is an inherently is quite often. I'm not going to argue the world. That's another thing I don't like to do, is argue the whole world. So is always. It's not always. You don't know for certain. You don't know if you don't know every single twin, right? So being an identical twin is quite often an interesting and inherently interesting, right? Because it's inherently interesting because of how people might treat you. It's quite often an inherently interesting, or they might look at you, or vice versa. I didn't want to go on and on. I mean, we have a lot of other stories, obviously, but you have to keep this brief. Let's see how long this is. This is 2 pages, single spaced. Let's end up with 2 pages, so that's about 4 full pages. Yeah, that's exactly what we're aiming for. Between 3 and 5, maybe 3 and 6. Being an identical twin is quite often an inherently interesting existence. Even starting from birth. And then this dot 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 ellipses is I haven't used it yet, and I think it could work here. I think it could work here, especially using it in conclusion. You could take a little bit more creative license. We could use a hyphen. We could just skip the punctuation altogether. But I think it works with the dots. So even starting from birth. Now, if we were writing a research essay, we would not want to use these almost ever, literally. So a narrative essay, a more personal essay, you have a little bit more license, I believe, and I think the teachers would probably agree. You have a little bit more license to be just a little bit more creative. Yes, comma blank, no, comma blank. Especially if you're trying to be more conversational, like in a college application essay or a scholarship application essay. It's very different than writing a research essay, right, for history or English lit, etc. So but you don't want to go overboard. You don't want to put 19 parentheses and a whole bunch of exclamation points everywhere, or like multiple exclamation points. You never want to put more than one exclamation point, ever, 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 in any essay that you're turning in for a grade. I can't think of a reason why you would in any grade, unless it was a quote, unless you were like directly quoting some book, where it had 7 exclamation points, etc. So just remembering what the venue is, right? So here we can use this ellipses, even though I wouldn't recommend it in a research paper. Okay, even starting from birth. I'm not going to play the victim. I'm not going to say people look at you in a certain way. Right? Only thing you're going to do is you're going to go back to the evidence that you've shared, and you're just going to like wrap it all up. So what evidence did we share? Well, we can see here. So slamming heads, taking a quiz, performances. Um, um, it is risky to be born. It is risky health-wise to be born a twin, or any multiple for that matter. And merely making it out as healthy, growing babies together is can perhaps be seen as a miracle. Making it out, though. Making it out of what? Making it out. I would say, and merely being granted the opportunity to live. But you're not really granted. I mean, I guess life like grants you the opportunity, but you're saying afforded. I guess afforded. Being afforded the opportunity to live as healthy grandbabies can perhaps be seen as a miracle in and of itself. Again, that's sort of a trite cliche, but seeing as it's a personal essay, and I don't know, we'll definitely revise this. We're gonna revise this, and maybe we can find a better way to phrase it. But this is just knocking it all out, getting this first draft done, and then going back and making it a final draft in and of itself. Chris and I, so now Chris and I oftentimes, did I say oftentimes already in this paragraph? I don't think so. Chris and I oftentimes Chris and I oftentimes used our heads let's just say, as is wont, as would be expected. I guess it's obvious, as is commonplace among all young people. This is why it's tricky. What I said was it's tricky. It's like using our heads. It's not an obvious like through line. So we have to really leap and be pretty adept at being able to make this work and make it not sound too hokey, or just make it work. That's the most important thing that a reader. One of the most important traits of a good essay is that does it work? Does the flow work, and does what their logic, what the writer is stating logically, does that logic make sense? And without becoming overly schmaltzy or trite or implausible, etc. So Chris and I oftentimes used our heads in both constructive and, I don't know if it was destructive ways, constructive and but I like the parallelism, construct, destruct. But yeah, we'll leave it and then see if we can think of something else. I guess let's just call it not so constructive. Again, we probably wouldn't use this term if it was a research essay. But so we're talking about personal stuff. In a narrative essay, it's more appropriate, or it can be considered more appropriate. Chris and I have to use our heads in both constructive and not so constructive ways as we grew up in the same household. As we grew up in the same household. As close. Grew up in the same as close resemblances of one another. With regards to physiognomy. We could say physiognomical, but it's sort of a heavy word to throw in this. So I think with regards to physiognomy, it works better. Looking back, right? It's sort of like that Stand By Me movie with Richard Dreyfuss. He's like looking back and talking about. I know I mentioned it before, but I sort of think about that that structure. And that's similar to what's happening here. It's like it's later in life, and I'm talking about being younger. It wasn't like last week. So, looking back, I think that looking back, I think that although our lives might have been simpler and full of and with less, I don't want to say the word drama because it's so overused. I just want I don't want any drama in my life. Like, you just hear that so much. And with less, let's see, with less, let's just put drama, and then we'll put that, sort of put the bracket, and then we'll look it up in a thesaurus, and maybe there's a better word. And with less strife, yeah, let's just call it strife. We'll just call it drama or strife for now, and then we can look it up. I think that although our lives might have been simpler and with less drama or strife, had we not gotten entangled in some of the silly and sometimes plain morally wrong, and I'll just put that here, and sometimes plain morally wrong, as in the case of cheating, silly decisions, right, that we made. Perhaps we might not have learned as much about ourselves as individuals and even as identical twins. I do believe that sometimes even making mistakes in life, I do believe that sometimes even making mistakes in life can be as good a teacher as those who quite literally teach us in our classrooms when growing up. When coming up, when growing up, because then that jumps in, that reminds, that uses the same like language and making connections. I guess the most, I guess the perhaps, since you just said sometimes I say perhaps, perhaps the most important question that one might ask when speaking with someone about their past is, would you do it all over again the same way? So then here, since it's a question, since the sentence perhaps blank, perhaps the most important question is blank, blank. So this is going to end with a period, right? So because it ends with a period, you have to make that sort of a fragment, sort of an introduction, and then this becomes a question. So they're separate. So I'm sure in subsequent videos we'll see an opportunity to not have to use that colon here, but here, I think it's helpful and I think more grammatically correct. I would like to think that I wouldn't have cheated. But no one knows for certain. What they would do in a given circumstance, given those same parameters, environment, conditions, people, etc. People in said environment, etc. Now, notice I didn't say people and pressures. Because again, I don't want to play the victim like, oh, there were all these pressures. Like my brother was pressuring me. He had a gun to my head. Like, you want to be very careful about the words that you choose. And it goes the same for any kind of writing. Even if you wrote an article for a news, for a website, an online website. Just, knowing that you want to be very cognizant of how the reader perceives your writing. So I don't want to say people in pressures instead of environment because there really weren't a lot of pressures. I could have easily said no. But also there's not a lot of drama or strife. Some people might think, man, your lives were relaxed. They were really chill. I mean, there were a lot of other stories that I could tell that, this was just a snapshot. But I'm definitely not going to pick a word that's like totally violent or super wild. I mean, I chose stories that were sort of funny and still, were sort of right down the middle in terms of the tone. But I would like to think that I wouldn't have cheated if I had to do it all over again. Do what? Do high school. One thing I do know is that I am grateful for being a healthy for being a healthy, I don't want to say, I guess you could say well-adjusted. Well-adjusted. I'll just say healthy. For being a healthy, identical twin adult. Healthy identical twin adult. I guess I could say well-adjusted. What does that even mean, though? I mean, we'll go back and revise, but I'm grateful for being a healthy, well-adjusted, identical twin adult. Because we're near the end of the essay. I don't want to go. I don't want to. Again, you don't want to argue the world. You want to get in there, say what you got to say, and then get out. So, would you do it all over again the same way? I'm thinking just identical twin adult, and I do hope that. And then here you could say my identical twin brother, because I haven't said that at all. Feels the same. Feels exactly the same. That's kind of funny, right? Exactly the same. Okay, so this isn't the greatest essay on planet Earth. This isn't going to win any awards, but this is an essay. I try to write an essay. Every time we get together and we do these, I want to write an essay. Not the essay, but an essay. We could go on and on and on. I mean, that's the tough thing about conclusions is like you could just go on and on and on. You could think of other questions that people could ask and then answer those, and then but it's just it gets so heavy. So what you want to do is you want to sort of get in there, exactly like I've iterated, and just argue something that's not too tough to argue, and then make sure that it connects with the thesis or the we don't really have a thesis here, but the opening paragraph. So the opening paragraph here is our heads, use our heads in life, taking risks. And then at the end here, I kind of talk about that. I do talk about that. I do believe, because you made mistakes. So even making mistakes and taking risks in life. So that connects exactly to the phrase that I used in the beginning of the essay. And then, yeah, I think this is a good first draft. We'll do a little bit of revisions, and I think it's decent. And then you see here at the end where I said I rarely said identical twins, and then at the very very end, I said healthy, well-adjusted, identical twin adult. I do hope that my identical twin. I do hope that Chris. And that's a little bit overboard. I do hope that Chris feels exactly the same way as I do. Yeah, exactly the same way as I do. Which is a wink to us being twins, yada yada yada. So if you can find a way to have a funny wink or something, in that vein, it's a nice flourish, nice way to end your essay. If a teacher might call it cute, like, oh, that was a cute ending, and da da da. You want to try to have your conclusion be not just functional, like perfunctory. You want to throw something interesting. And it's not like I have that much to draw from. I'm literally just talking about one thing, being an identical twin. That's basically it. So I think this is the only thing that we could have used. We could have connected to something specific, like a play, like acting, like cheating, like math, but those are like banging heads, but those are individual stories. Remember, where those individual stories, those three individual stories add up to the overarching umbrella of us being identical twins, and how it's sort of interesting to be an identical twin. So it probably wouldn't fit for me to just mention something that was interesting about one of those 3 stories. I've got to mention it about the whole umbrella. So the only way to go is identical twin. So even though it's simple and it seems kind of like basic or obvious, I think this is really one of our only moves. I mean, we don't have that many moves if we want to throw a flourish in there. Um, Anyways, hopefully this was helpful. I'm gonna do a wrap up video next where we're gonna edit everything and put the title on it, and then this essay is gonna be done. So, but this is the first draft. Thank you for sticking around with me. If you guys watched all of them.